Okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about workplace harassment, specifically how it can be for many Black women navigating in the workplace as it pertains to workplace harassment. If you're familiar with my channel at all, you know this is not something about which I normally speak. So you may be wondering, where's this coming from? Well, a couple of months back, I did a video, what I thought was a lighthearted video, about dressing for specific themes throughout the week of school. All said in what I thought was a lighthearted tone, right? As it turns out, that resonated with several women, and I ended up getting several emails about that. And I'm a person who pretty much lives by the 1, 2, 3 rule. You know, if something happens once, okay, that's an incident. Something happens twice, well, okay, we're looking at a coincidence, but I'm certainly looking a little closer, right? And if it happens 3 times, okay, now we see a pattern. That being said, I got more than 3 emails about what it's like to be in the workplace as a solo Black woman, whether or not it felt racial, any of the tension I may have, did I feel tension? Did that tension feel racially motivated? How did I keep and maintain my sanity as well as my independence? Just things of that nature that let me know, wow, this is a real thing. And 2 of those women mentioned the stresses of going back to work after being able to work at home, you know, during COVID. So I thought, this must be a bigger pattern than I realized. Not just teachers, but more teachers than anything. But not just teachers had asked me about that. So I thought, maybe I should address it. And that's what we're doing now. I think though, before we get too far into workplace harassment versus racially motivated harassment, I probably need to separate the 2. I'll first separate the 2 and then I'll tell you why it may feel like they're the same. So when you're talking about workplace harassment, you're basically talking about, does the person feel obligated to tolerate it in an effort to keep their job? Does it make for an uncomfortable circumstance or work situation? And then is it retaliation or of some sort for maybe a grievance that you filed before? So those are pretty much the basis of workplace harassment. Now, when you start talking about racially motivated workplace harassment, now you're talking about negative stereotypes being stated, racial slurs, of course, racial jokes, things like that. When you're dealing with workplace harassment, many times the tactics used for racism are also used in workplace harassment. And why not? It's worked for some 500 years, right? So there's usually the inferiority. This person is not good at their job. This person is not qualified. This person, you know, so they may start with those tactics. They're just not up to snuff. They're whatever fill in the blank is going to be. So that's part of why it may feel that way. And another reason I think that workplace harassment can also feel racially motivated is because you're dealing with racial fatigue already. And then to have someone target you for workplace harassment is just that added layer, that added unnecessary layer. But it's still all stressful. Either way it goes, whether it's workplace harassment, racially motivated workplace harassment, it's all stressful. But I want to revisit one key point. One thing that I think worth noting is that I mentioned how a couple of the ladies said going back to work is particularly hard after COVID. And I don't want you to minimize that. It's not just COVID. You have to remember what was happening in 2020 during COVID. We were all polarized by what was going on with the murder of George Floyd, right? So we're getting all of that information. Still more information was coming in where there were more killings, there were the riots, there were the protests. And by the way, can we separate, rightfully so, protests versus riots? Because they're 2 totally different things. But I think as people try to lump them and say protest and riots and put them together, they're trying to get you to not protest things that rightfully should be protested. So again, there's a difference between protests and riots. That being said, all of this information was coming in at the same time during COVID. So I think there is this temptation to say, oh, I got to work from home during COVID and now going back is stressful. Well, there were a lot of other stressors going on. The idea of having to take in all of that information, then having to navigate the world as a person of color, still receiving your own microaggressions and more information, compiled with the fact that many of us in our homes have to also still discuss racism. It's a part of being safe. Like, you just don't send your child out into the world, especially as they become one of driving age and things like that, where they may be pulled over. You can't responsibly send them out without telling them, hey, in the event that you get pulled over, this is how you respond. In the event of, you know what I mean? So there's a lot that can go on that we have to just deal with that can lead to our racial fatigue. Okay, so all that said, what do I know about workplace harassment? Well, I myself was the target of workplace harassment, and I think the term victim is an odd term for me because I don't at all feel victimized, but I do know that I was targeted, specifically, overtly, downright, repeatedly targeted. So the way it worked for me was, this was my first experience working in a predominantly white district. Believe it or not, I moved through several schools within one district, went to another district, moved through several schools, and at none of those times was I ever the minority on a teaching staff. So for this first time, I go into an environment where I'm now the minority. It was interesting, but hey, I've been teaching for, well over 10 years at this point. I can handle this. I've got this. I mean, teaching's teaching, kids are kids. What could be the big difference? So anyway, let's get started with convocation. For my convocation, I ride in with my team members. So mind you, I'm new to the district, I'm new to the team, and not at all being narcissistic, I kind of thought we might exchange information about ourselves. They might ask me about me. I certainly wanted to ask them about them. None of that happened. Instead, what happened was the two women in the front began this detailed, cruel conversation about one of our colleagues. I did not at that time even know the person, but they were talking about what a fool this person was for being married to the person to whom they were married. She's gone out and gotten another job to support this bum, and it was just negative, nasty, negative the whole ride through. And I'm sitting in the back seat wondering, oh dear, what have I gotten myself into? Now again, I'm new to the district, and my name is common enough that there had been another Kimberly with the same last name in the district as well. That being the case, there was some mix-up with my ID. I was actually assigned her ID. So I'm entering the number and I can't get copies. That being said, someone told me, oh, Mrs. So-and-so has a printer. And I thought, oh, okay. Mind you, this is not my teammate, but one of the people who was in the front seat talking so negatively about the other colleague. But I go to her room anyway, and I'm like, hi, would you mind if I print off some things? Sure. And it's taking a little while, and she starts trying to engage me in conversation, specifically conversation about my teammates. So how do you like being on that team? And how do you feel about, so-and-so? Oh, baby, I've already heard the conversation that you had in the front seat. If I was even interested in having a conversation about other people, it would have never been with either of those women, much less her. However, before it was all said and done, somehow I had said something nasty about the other teacher, and now she had a reason to not like me, or something about being thrown under a bus. I don't even remember how it went. And it's hard to remember, you know why? Because it was a lie. I mean, I'm a lot of things, but I'm not stupid. I just finished listening to the two of you talk so nasty about another person. Do you honestly think I would have ever had a conversation with her about someone else? Never happened. I stand by that 100%. But anywho, The narrative of me not being a good teacher had already begun. Never mind the fact that they hadn't even observed me teaching. They just pulled that out and put that out about me. All right, so remember, one of the first keys is you have to say that the person is inferior in some way. Check. And to be fair, there was another teacher I knew who worked there, and she had referred me to the principal or recommended me to the principal. That being the case, that's not why I got the job. I think I got the job because I have an extensive education in education. I have an extensive background in education. I somehow think I got the job because I was qualified, but I do know that I was referred by this person. So I'm not negating the fact that she referred me. I'm simply stating that were I not qualified for the job, I wouldn't have gotten it anyway. While we're still at the beginning stage of this year, I had already noticed a couple of slick comments or something, and when I'd hear it, I was like, hey, so what do you mean by that? Wait, that sounds kind of odd. Nothing. Let's stick to the norms. We have to stick to the norms. Let's just get back to what the meeting is about. And then, we'd go. So I'm like, okay. So you don't want to address it, but okay. Well, at some point, everything came to a head, I guess, and the tension just started getting thicker between us. We're out at recess, getting ready to come in, and I don't even remember what it was about, but this person exploded and began yelling. And heaven help me, I yelled right back. And this was in front of colleagues, even in front of some of the students. I can honestly say I had enough sense to know how trashy that was. And for the next 2 weeks, I was sick and disgusted about my actions. It's when you know not to be trashy and you do it anyway, or it was just a visceral reaction. I've since forgiven myself, but just reflecting back on that, utterly disgusted with myself. But even at that time, I went to those colleagues, their students, my students as well, and I literally apologized. I'm so sorry that happened. It should not have happened. This is not the place for that to happen. I know better. It's never going to happen again. I legitimately apologized. And they were like, it's not that big a deal. We've seen that before. That was a clue, but I didn't really pick up on it. I'm thinking, oh, you've seen that before in life. You've never seen it for me, and you'll never see it again. That is the one time in all my years of teaching, it's now 20 some odd years of teaching, that I ever behaved that way. And I promise you, it will never happen again. That's just how disgusted I was with my trashy behavior. And granted, it was just a quick yell right back. But when you know better, you do better, The other thing is, although I was responding, I guess you could say fighting fire with fire. So although I was responding back in a trashy way, what I know to be true, and most Black people in general, what we know is that there's a Black tax. You may respond in the same trashy way as someone else, but you're labeled as ghetto when you do. Like there's an extra tax. That being the case, I was that much more disgusted by my own actions. Anyway, to this person's credit, after that very day, actually, she called me in and said, hey, can we have a talk? Sure. I even met her in her own room on her territory, and surprisingly, she said, listen, we got off on the wrong foot. Let's just start over. I'm not going to say any more of the nasty stuff, slick stuff. I can acknowledge I've done some of that. If you can acknowledge you've done it too. I hadn't done it too, but that was already telling kind of this person's personality. Like, in order for me to be wrong, you've got to be wrong about that too. And it wasn't the case, but that's okay. So I said, okay, no problem. Let's go ahead, start with a clean slate, move forward. Mind you now, I'm literally physically still sick about the trashy way I had already behaved, so I just kind of want to squash it quickly, move on. But also, remember what I said about my 1, 2, 3 pattern. That being the case, I'm watching you very closely now. Initially, at this time, I had begun the process of trying to record some of the meetings on my phone. not technologically savvy at all me would sometimes fumble. I needed to hit the record button again. It didn't last long. It was just all kinds of mess. That being the case, I sought another means of kind of recording and documenting what was going on. So that's one of the first things I want to tell you, that if you're feeling that you're being harassed, document, document, document. And I mean document everything. Just even odd little nuances where you're not sure about, document it. Overtly said things, of course, I don't have to tell you, document it. Just colleagues even questioning what's going on, or, question them right back. Why do you say that? Why do you feel that way? And document that as well. Anyway, time moves on. The slick comments have certainly calmed down some, but I still notice that there's this distance between me and other staff members. They have little social outings. They don't really invite me. They don't come by my room. Or when we pass each other in the hallway, their hello is very terse. Just those little things that tell you something's up. So anyway, I come by around the corner one day, and they're talking about going to some social outing. There was a small group of them. And I said, hey, you guys mind if I join? And it was like, yeah, sure, yeah. Like, they repeated yeah, and the yes kept getting more high-pitched. It was almost comical. But, I maintained a straight face, which for me is a huge feat, because awkward situations always make me laugh. But I maintained my straight face. I ended up going to lunch, or it wasn't lunch, I'm sorry, it was after work. I ended up going out with them later. We have drinks. And, at first it's kind of weird and, a little looking around or whatever. But once the drinks got to flowing and things got a little more comfortable, out came the conversations that needed to be had. I was asked, hey, so what's the deal between you and so-and-so? Like, what is that all about? And I said, I don't know. What do you think it's all about? Remember, you always kind of turn the question back on them. Gee, I don't know. It's so weird. Have they ever been like that with anyone before? Magic question to be asked. Because next thing I know, they launch into oh my gosh, remember the time that she yelled at so-and-so? Remember the other time when she and another person remember when? And they just go into all of these different stories of this same person having issues with multiple coworkers over the course of multiple years. So I'm listening and I just hear a pattern. So at some point I said, wow, it sounds like there's a common denominator in all of that. Everyone gets quiet and then burst out laughing. Next up comes one of the people explaining, well, she grew up in an abusive household. Yeah, another one kicks in. Yeah, she witnessed a whole lot of da-da-da. And it just became this thing of, wow, do they even like this person? I don't think so. But hey, me, I mind my business. I'm just kind of listening, nodding, recording it all. I'll talk more about that. And just, wow, really? Okay, wow, bless her heart. To some degree, honestly, it kind of made me feel bad for her. Honestly, after that dinner, I walked away with a different view of that person. Certainly a sadder view of that person, because I know from conversations, we even had a whole meeting about it. Like, we had a little bit of mediation about this whole mess. I know this person considered these people to be her friends. Literally said she has relationships with these people, and yet this is how they really see her. They, told her business to me, a supposed enemy of hers. It was sad. It was really sad. But being around their stories, a couple of them repeated what I had heard before, because I said something about, ladies, it's pretty cool that we're here and we're enjoying this now. I feel bad that, we really haven't done this before. I kind of wonder why not. Wow, yeah. After I'd said that, a couple of them literally said, yeah, it's because so-and-so pretty much said that if we talk to you, we're choosing sides. I said, she pretty much said that? No, like she literally said that. And another one said, oh yeah, she told me the same thing. And so that's absurd and sad. It's ridiculous, really. But still another one said, oh, I never heard that. All I heard was that you're not a good teacher. And I said, I wonder when she saw that, like when was her chance? Because surely while I'm teaching ELA and reading, she's supposed to be doing the same thing in her room. So I wonder how she could possibly have come up with that conclusion. That's really weird to me. And it got kind of quiet. They were like, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Like, had you never even thought of how does this person even come up with the idea that I can't teach? But there had been a point where we did, little miniature observations as teachers. We kind of walk around and see, how does someone else do this? Or how does someone else do that? But it wasn't even an ELA or a math lesson. It was kind of a breakout session where the kids get to kind of work independently on things and all of that she would have observed. And I don't even think it was 15 minutes. You're supposed to stay a full 15, 20-minute time span and didn't even do that. So yeah, them looking around, just kind of wondering, yeah, I'm just here to make you think. I don't really have answers, but I would like you to think independently. Ultimately, though, I think the whole goal of all of the shenanigans and the inferiorities and the isolations and all of that, I think it was supposed to either get me fired, which couldn't happen because I'm not that poor teacher they painted me out to be, so admin is not going to fire me. But also probably geared toward getting me to quit. And that would have been a hard bill for me as well, because I'm just not that person who goes to work expecting to make a bunch of friends, and you shouldn't be either. Like, honestly, let's think about it. Think about the coworkers that you have at your job. Do you like all of them? Probably not, right? So if you don't like all of them, what makes you think all of them should like you? You know what I mean? I'm there, my whole purpose for going to a job is to do the job and be compensated. I'd like to be compensated fairly, but I chose education, right? But my purpose is to go in, do a job, be compensated for that job. Now, in the event that I make friends or good associates and things like that along the way, that's just a bonus. But that's not my purpose in being there. I think if you stay the course to the purpose of you being there, that's going to help some. And by no means am I negating or minimizing what it feels like to be targeted for workplace harassment. But I am saying, try to keep your eye on the prize. That being said, there's a little bit more to say. Remember, I mentioned a little bit that I was recording some of that mess and the shenanigans going on. Well, I don't mean I was just recording it. I mean, I used my cell phone to try to record. And when that didn't work, I have 2 of these devices. So this one is a little bit bent, as you can see, but this is the one that I would sometimes put into my blouse, clip to my bra, and literally record in that way. It looks like a regular schmegular ballpoint pen, and it works and operates. Yeah, it'll write and all of that. I believe I picked this up at like a Radio Shack type of store. This would have been before they went out of business. But you get a device like this, and I'm guessing it's probably on Amazon. And I don't know if it's coming across on camera, but there are these little buttons on the side here that you use for recording. Every single day, every single meeting, all the time, any incidents that I had with these women. But anywho, as you do your recording and as you consider litigation and you get all your ducks in a row for that, the other thing I want you to consider is, to me, there's a difference between a victory and a win. I certainly could have taken this matter to court. Multiple incidences of workplace harassment, negative comments, nasty, slick things that were said to me. One of the hardest things I had to do was play possum. Hi, I just wanted to jump in and say playing possum, of course, is important because you need to show a lack of provocation for all of the actions that this other person is choosing to take against you. In my case, in addition to the segregation or isolation that she tried to coerce my coworkers into engaging with me, there was also eye rolling, exaggerated sighing, and things like that. At the beginning of the year, I know we as teachers are really busy trying to get our rosters together, clean up our classrooms, organize, and all of that other stuff. But in addition to that, your district is likely providing you with video that you have to watch in order to progress throughout the year. That video usually talks about sexual harassment, of course, but it also talks about general harassment and things like eye rolling, sighing, making your work environment a harder place for you to complete your job. All of those things are typically included in that video. I strongly encourage you, if you are a person who's being harassed, to pay close attention to that, because it isn't just the district covering their butt now, right? It's a blueprint for you in order to say, hey, we were all provided this information and this person decided to blow right through that and harass me anyway. What relief can I get for this? Playing possum is just like, remember, you say something slick to me, I got that, I've got a rapid tongue too. I can come right back with it. But that's not what you're going to do if you're recording yourself, right? Speaking of recording yourself, you need to know whether or not your state allows such evidence. I live in the state of Missouri. Missouri is a one-party consent state. I do believe Texas is also a one-party consent state as well. I say that because I've got family in Texas and I have family who happen to be lawyers. Hey, that's a bonus for me. So I'm not just guessing about what I'm talking about. I'm telling you what I know. But you also want to know, is your state a one-party consent state? Meaning, hey, only one person has to know about the recording, and that one person can be self. It can be the person who's actually doing the recording. Now, let's talk about the difference between a victory and a win. For you, the big win may be getting someone fired, or, having it legally noted that these things happen to you. I don't know. Only you know what your win is. For me, I had to take a victory. And I'm too busy doing the two things that keep me happy, which is minding my business and staying out of yours. That is just what happy people do. So I had to understand, wow, she's not happy. Can't be, or she wouldn't be this busy, this bothered. Remember, she's had repeated incidents with repeated coworkers or multiple coworkers over the course of years. This is a repeated pattern for this person, and this isn't what happy people do. It reminded me of years ago, I used to watch this very trashy show called Bad Girls Club. And the one thing I detested most in that show was when girls would gang up on one girl. The person I always thought was the stronger person, the victor in that, was the one person still willing to stand on her own and still be unapologetically herself. And that, for me, was my victory. I still stood on my own, even as people knew, even as people would later talk to me. And let me not say that, because in all fairness, honestly, some people were like, yeah, this is bad. If you need someone to testify, because at one point I did come out and say, I'm starting to document things, and I don't know, I might have to take this to HR. Literally, people were like, I'd be willing to speak on your behalf. Yeah, this is crazy. It's going on much longer than it ever has with anyone else. But I even asked the question, what do you think is the difference between all of those people that she had problems with and me? Like, why do you think, for some reason, she and I, after all this time, just can't smooth it over? What's the difference that you see? And they asked, do you think it's because you're black? I don't know. Do you? What do you think? There is a difference. We know that much. We just don't know the whys. But honestly, after a while, I didn't even care about the why. Like I said, the bigger victory for me was just still maintaining who I am, still being there. And you have to understand, for me, I understood that this is a culture. You've seen this person perform in this way for a number of years, and you all just kind of accept it as, that's just so-and-so, that's kind of how she is. So me winning a legal fight in a culture that is okay with that kind of nastiness really wasn't a win for me. Instead, what I viewed as a bigger win was for me to just continue being my regular schmegular black self and just showing people and working with people that, hey, This is what it's really like. I know what you've been told. I know what you've heard. Never mind all that. I'm inviting you to see me for yourself. I'm inviting you to form your own opinion. Is racial harassment, workplace harassment, racial fatigue, are all of those real things? They absolutely are. And it's a matter of us really having to figure out better ways of navigating through it. It might be cathartic for you to talk to others about it. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and close up. I hope I said something that helped. I encourage others who may have gone through this or have some experience with this to help us out. Comments below, and please keep it positive, keep it helpful, and whatever else you do, take care.